Everyone to Delphicon 2023, when we are celebrating the 28 years of Delphi. And in this session, we will see when Delphi reached the cloud by me, Dion Mai. And we are talking here about using Delphi with cloud resources, cloud features like mostly serverless. Okay, so we'll see from the beginning to a little deep dive and what is serverless, how to implement the backend, how to implement the front end, and advantages of using serverless. Okay, a little bit about me. I'm Dion Mai, developer manager at Aquasoft, outsource company in Brazil. I'm MVP Embarcadero, Delphi, C++ builder, Delphi Master Certified, and Bachelor in Engineering in Control and Automation. So, what is serverless? Serverless is an applied FaaS, okay, function as a server. When we use cloud to provide functions that we can access externally, locally, okay, but hosted on cloud. So instead of put a whole application, a whole API on a cloud service, we will just put a little function and call that function from our application or source. And maybe they wrong the name. I mean, if we put some function in the cloud, how can it be serverless? Maybe they have wrong the name. We don't know. Well, it's not that we don't have a server in serverless. We call it serverless because the server is offline. Serverless is event triggered and only be online when the function is running. So for us, what it changed? It changed that we only have to pay the time that the function is running. Very different from hosting a machine in a cloud service when we have to pay all the time that machine is turned on. In this kind of cloud service, we only call the function and we only pay the function when the function is running. So how does it work? Well, we send a HTTP request and the server will load all the function environment, will run the function and play all the source that we put through the server. After that, the server will dispatch the response to the client, okay? And after that, the server will unload all the resources. And this is the life cycle of a function running in serverless. Once again, just to make everything clear, in a practical sense, is like the user executing some request, okay, through HTTP or any other protocol. This request will trigger an event in the server. Server will load all the resources for our function, will run our function, send the response data to the client, and unload all the function resources. Okay. In this workflow here, we can see that when server is running the function, okay, and finished it, all the resources can be unloaded. So for function structure, from application structure, maybe we have made some changes, okay, because it's not like running a local function or a function inside a DLL or other API methods. Then we can store variables, cache, or other kind of things, okay. And we will isolate some functions and put that on separate servers, right? And call that isolated functions from different points of our application. Not all the source code can be put on FaaS server, on functions, cloud functions, okay? We can be more clear about what kind of functions we can or cannot put on serverless using some development concepts like DDD, okay? domain-driven design, and Delphicon we will have a session about DDD. You can watch it, and it's made by Gustavo Mena, and it maybe will help us to understand what kind of uh, business logic we can put through serverless functions and what we cannot. Notice, DDD is not about serverless, okay? DDD help us to separate and architecture better our systems, okay? But with these clarifications of business logic, maybe it's more easy for us to isolate some slices of our source code and put that on serverless functions, okay? Well, steps to build and to implement the back end, okay, the server part of the serverless or cloud function. We'll have to select one cloud provider. Many cloud providers have support to serverless or server functions, okay? We can use Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, and they have many differences between each cloud provider, okay? And for this session we will use Azure, right? And I'll show you how we can do serverless functions with or without using Delphi code on the backend, right? But for AWS, Google, maybe you have to change some things, to change the native language, to change the way that serverless functions work, because each provider has some specificities by itself, okay? Right. The next step after we select the cloud provider, we have to create an account, yes, with a credit card on it, right? So many cloud providers has free services that we can use and not pay it, but all the services has limits, and when we step through that limit, we have to pay for using the services, right? And after that, we have to choose the backend technology. We can use a native language. In Azure case, we can write application in C#, okay? Or we can use binaries, containers, small VMs to run our application. I have seen some functions running in Fortran, running in small VMs, not containers, okay, because they needed Windows environment, and of course it has some downsides, but it works, okay. And after that, we have to write our function, put our business logic in that function, create an undeployed environment so we can put our function online, publish on a function, so the function will be available to access from any client that we choose. And after that, we have many configurations in the function dashboard. So we can choose the function limit executions, we can choose the regions that has access to that function, the security layers that we wanted that the client must pass through to get to our function, and the logs that we wanted that the function register or not. And in Azure, very simple, okay? We have an Microsoft manual, step by step, what we have to do to create a function. I choose this and put the link in this session as well on the GitHub, so you can go through it. It is updated by Microsoft and work very well, okay? And this manual in particular, okay, this manual here has how we can configure function to run our Delphi code, right? So we'll put like a Go or a Rush application in the server, and the server will run that executable for us, okay? Right, and the Azure account, we have 30 days of credit to test and with full access with many other resources. but after that, 5 million executions are free by month for your functions, right? And by now it will be always free. We are only based on consumption. And yes, here comes your credit card after the 30 days, or if you pass through the limits of consumption, we have to pay the service. Okay, right. Candidate 1 million free executions per month. Even 5 million X will be the price around $1, just $1. 5 million X of one function by a month will cost us about $1. And if we put an online virtual machine, it will cost many times more. We have a pricing calculator. All the cloud providers have one, so you can go there and measure your cost by your service that you may need. And in Visual Studio Code, okay, we can do it on Visual Studio as well, but in Visual Studio Code, we just need to install it, install the Azure Functions core tool, and create our first function locally. We can even run the function locally and test it, right? And without even put that on cloud in the first step. And after we tested everything is okay, right? After that, we can just publish our function in the cloud environment. So we can have full access to test the function before even to publish that. So the function will run with the exact same environment that the function will run on runtime. When we are creating our first function, we have to choose if we want to write it natively with C Sharp, okay, or if we want to use some custom handler like with Delphi, so we go for this way. After that, we have to choose how function will run, so we choose how methods the function will respond, if function will answer to HP post, HP get, or only to put or only to delete, right? And as well as the authentication level that we wanted the function to run. And we have to configure where the executable file will be so the function can access it and run it, right? Notice that this function here doesn't have any source writing in C Sharp. It only has these two JSON configuration files, and all the source that will run in runtime is written in this Delphi application here, right? So all the source code is in the executable file, okay? And in Delphi, it's very simple to write this application to answer the function call. We have just to get this environment variable to has access to the port that will be calling our application, and we have to run an HTTP web broker bridge, very simple application that will answer that call on that specific port. Okay, the port of course will be provided by the Microsoft Azure server, and we just receive what port is it, and after that we start our server. The server will call our server on that port, and we have to deal with business logic, and after that send the response back to the client, right? Well, if we want it, we can write the source in C Sharp as well, right? And of course, our application maybe can be more complex because we have to deal with many programming languages, but is also this option, okay? And the process in the Visual Studio with C Sharp is very similar to what we done with Visual Code with our Delphi application. The only main difference is that instead of sending our .exe file to a server to run it, we will just send our source code compiled by Visual Studio and put it to run as a function on the server, right? Well, locally, the Azure tools of Microsoft will simulate our function. Notice that I put all by images here, so I think it's more easy, more clear that we see all the things. Okay, but if we have time, maybe we have time at the end of this session, I can show you the search running, or if you want it, all the search will be on my GitHub. You can download it and go through these steps, as well as this presentation will be accessible as a PDF file, so you can go through these steps and run by yourself. It's very simple, but very easy to run it. Okay, so with this Microsoft tool, the function will run locally with the same environment, okay, that the function will have available at the published server environment. So we can test it locally, even through or other application of ours, by Postman. We can call it to test if it will work, and it's very simple to deal with it. It's like we are calling any other API. Okay, right. And through our client in Delphi, we have just put all the same configurations that we put to access any other API, right? And of course, in our Delphi application with a large or more complex system or structure, it's better that we isolate some classes, put some wrapper classes around our API call, so the business logic will be more clear and more usable by the client side of application. Okay, but if we don't need much complexity, we can just call it with REST response, REST request, and REST client components. Okay, you can generate that from REST debugger, the Delphi tool, or if you choose, you can use HTTP to get the same methods. It's very simple to access, like we access any other API. From the client side, is almost transparent. Okay, we don't have any different behavior by using the serverless at the server, and the call will be just an execute and get the content of the REST response. After that, we just have to deal with our response JSON as we usually do. And after we run locally, everything works fine. What we can do? We have to go to the Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio and just publish our application, our function. After that, our function will be published through the cloud, and the dashboard of the cloud server, we can watch how it's going, how many requests are sent to through the server, how many responses, how much time, how much milliseconds does the function took to answer all the requests. Okay, and it's very simple, very easy to watching the functions in this dashboard. Okay, right. So make all clear, a little recap. The life cycle will be server powered off. We don't have even a server that we can do some tests if the server is online. The function basically does not exist on Microsoft servers. When some requests arrive, the server will load all our function resources, load our .exe file, load our native source, run all the instructions that we write in the source code. After that, we have an unload process, and we only pay in this window frame here. Okay, we only have to pay in this window frame, of course. If the running took too much time, the cost of execution of this function will be more expensive than that of one function that we have a small window of running time, right? And in the architecture structure of serverless, the ideal world will be we going less and less to monolith architecture when we have just one big, large server application, uh, even through microservices when we have a small amount of business logics grouped, okay, and go even more to functions when we have a very complex and dynamically environment, and in that environment we can easily change all the functions independently without affecting or changing any other behavior from other functions that already are running on the server, right? The main advantage of using serverless is that we can easily update one function isolatedly. Okay, on one function will be updated, and any other function that are running on that same structure of ours will not even notice that some slice of our code will be changing. Here another image to make even more clear that in more complex environments we have even functions calling other functions, right? If we put a very isolated business logic in some function, maybe other function will need that business logic to do some large process, and yes, we can call other business serverless functions from one function, and of course will be more very more complex environment, but it's not away from what we use in our local executable file or our backend server nowadays, okay, is only other way to see the things, or other way to deal with these complex environments that we usually have to deal day by day. And another image, I think, should maybe make more clear of what we can see, but consider your application. This architecture change maybe will reduce many costs of yours, and making the development process even more easy. So the benefits, the advantages of using serverless or server functions. Uh, the cost, okay, the cost of running have a server running will be many times lower if we use functions instead of have a machine or a local server running it, okay. The speed to go live, the speed to put some slices of our code online running is dramatically low, right? We Can you imagine you update a big monolith server in just a few clicks, in just a few seconds, without impacting all the users that are using that server currently, right? It's almost impossible to think about it, but with functions we can have it this environment, okay? We can update just one function in that large structure, and other functions don't even know that some slice of code has been updated, right? Monitoring tools is a very great advantages of using serverless. Think about, exactly how many functions call of that business logics you have nowadays on your current system, right? Maybe today you already have some API to access, and you can count through that API how many calls that specific API receive. But with functions, if we put some specific business logics on one serverless function, we can see how many calls it given by day, by hour, how many time milliseconds that function had to answer the response to the clients. And of course, if you know how much time and calls some functions receive, you can know what to improve on your system, right? Uh, Functions that receive more calls, functions that receive more attentions by your customers, your clients, maybe that functions you need to put more effort on search, more effort on performance, and other things, right? And you have an increase in user and reusing your source code, right? Because with one good function published, you can use it from all your system by API call, right? You don't have to uh, stop considering how you can link all your source and deal with the uses clauses. All that will be ignored because all you need is just a API call, and you will have access to that business logic that you put in that function, right? Now the advantages or disadvantages by using the downside by using serverless. We have an increasing complexity, of course, we will have an increasing complexity, but our system nowadays always are increasing in complexity, right? I don't know, I don't see any system that year by year are less and less complex, only the opposite side. Uh, you have full dependency on a cloud provider, right? Think about it, because when you choose the cloud provider, all the things that you will be related of the way that server functions right or work in that server maybe can change from other cloud provider, and you of course will have some impacts on your client application, or how you work at architecture the things to work on the server side. So choose carefully your cloud provider, right? I'm not saying here that Azure is better. I only say that work it for this particular sample, but you have to choose carefully, considering your business logic, your software house needs. Okay, you can have data lock in case of absence of payment. So very careful about that. If some credit card has been blocked, it's stolen, you can lose access to all your applications. Your applications will immediately go offline, and all cloud providers will only get you through it after you paid. I have seen some cases where some accounts of clients of mine have been racked, right? And the bill of cloud provider goes very high, because when they hacked this account, they create many virtual machines to explore bitcoins, and that generate a very large bill of cloud resources, and many customers of mine had to call the cloud provider and change many things. But in all cases, the cloud providers uh, restore all the values and everything like that. But think about it, okay? If you don't pay, you don't access your cloud services, right? So even using low cost by a small amount of calls, you will have to pay attention on that, right? And mistakes on source or even malicious call can generate you great cost, right? So think about it. If someone uh, understanding your cloud architecture, know how to call one function of yours, can put a system to do many calls, and you will have to pay for that calls even if you are not using. So select the security pass through to access your functions will be very important. Pay much attention on that, right? And change of cloud provider, as I told you before, can demand changes on your source, on your architecture, right? You maybe don't have some resources on your cloud provider to deal with some things with cloud functions that you have in another. So pay a lot of attention on that, right? And some difference that we have seen in many cloud providers, the cost maybe have some difference, right? The access to native language, some cloud providers did not support today run all uh, native environments. Okay. The environment to run the functions, some cloud providers give you access to the physical databases, others require you to call on other functions to get access on that, right? Need of extra libs to access some things, so maybe you have to put other libraries from the cloud provider to have access to some resources, right? The amount of recalls monthly can change by each cloud provider, and many of the additional tools, region, control, limit of functions, maybe these resources can change from through the different cloud providers. Okay, and after we are using serverless, maybe it will be more easily for us to use other cloud related tools, right? And message services like MQTT or SKS or other message queue services that we have. Maybe it will be more easy for you to use that if you don't use it today, right? The logs of serverless functions are very good, and will be much more easy for you to understand your application's bugs, your application's delays, and maybe even more easy for you to deal with it using serverless, right? You can have function apps or logical apps, as you choose to call it, but you can isolate your functions and call it all through a web interface that many cloud providers allow you to create. So from many perspectives, you can access all your functions without even having a client, having just a interface that you create on your server side, right? And all this function, all this application will be running by function serverless, right? So even the interface will be cached on the executions call, right? And other way to see, other way to implement and have access to your actual or your currently business logic, right? You can have application insight. Application insight is a tool that many cloud providers have that will help you to see all the bottlenecks of your current process, which process take more time, which process demand more hardware access, and many other things, right? And you can have full access to many monitors that can help you to understand how your current application in a large environment can work, and what you have to choose or improve to work even better and even more large application. So here are some links. Okay, we have a YouTube video from Embarcadero explaining all this process that I did here to create a serverless function. We have the Microsoft manual that I told you before. You have the manual from Microsoft to create native apps. And I really want to thank you Okay, all the samples that I used here, even I'm not going through all the source code, as you can see here, is here, is available for you on Git. This presentation as a PDF file will be available for you as well, right? And please contact me if you have any question, any answer, and I am here to answer all your questions in the Q&A section.
All right, so we've got time here for Q&A, and Dion's on here to answer your questions. If you have questions, put them in the chat, which it's on one of the sides here. Put it in there.
Hi, Dim.
Hello. And
Hello.
So whatever platform you're watching on, whether it be YouTube or Twitch or Facebook, you can put it in the chat, and it should all come in here, and then we will answer your questions for you. So I do want to say I appreciate that you talked about the importance of securing your account and not getting those unexpected charges, because that is a really big deal. I talked to a lot of people that work in that industry, and that's the thing people don't take into account properly, and gets in trouble. So that's really important.
Even when the server is yours, Tim, I think that you have to consider a very careful. The security is a very buggy thing if you're not playing it well.
Yeah. Patrick says the costs of cloud are too often random. I don't know they're random, but they can be hard to predict, although there usually are mechanisms that you can put in place to set limits up.
All the cloud providers that I used them has features that you can put limits on how much each function do you want to spend, how much do you want to spend with each function. So you have a full you can have full planning on that to not have any trouble, not have any surprise on the end of the month.
Lars does say cloud is where it's at these days, which is true. And there's a comment here from Skybuck Flying says, I have 4 slices of pizza and I'm watching a Delphi plus cloud tutorial. Life is good. It's the simple things in life, right?
Very good. I have to mention Glenn. The Glenn has did that Embarcadero session that I mentioned on my video. It helped me a lot on the start of using cloud, because at that moment I only used cloud with C#. And after I see that video, I start to use with Delphi and works very well in many projects.
Yeah, I was glad to see Glenn did that as well, because it was one of those things I looked at it and I was like, I think you could do that with Delphi. And then Glenn's like, yep, you can. I'll do it. And I say, cool. Thank
you. Very nice.
Let's see. Question here. There's a question about how much memory you can allocate on Azure, and now I can't find it. I've lost it. Do you know offhand what that would be?
I never deal with any limit on that, Dim. I only have the limit that how much memory you will spend, you will have to pay for that. Mm-hmm. So if you want to load 5 GB of RAM memory in one single call, you can load it, but you have to pay for that.
Wow, okay, there's a lot of questions here, and I've completely lost where I was going with that. All right, so yeah, that's what I found too, and that's really amazing thing, honestly. I mean, you are paying for it, but the fact that you can get as much as you want. If you have the money, you could get a lot of memory and a lot of compute power and everything up there. Great event, thank you. Comment here from Lars, Kubernetes for the win. Have you done much with Kubernetes, Dion?
No. My systems didn't go so large, so I only stayed with Docker.
Okay. There we go. There's Glenn's function. Fantastic. Thank you. So I looked into it a while back, and unfortunately, it's not something I use every day. But if I remember correctly, Kubernetes. I will embarrass myself if I try. I remember looking at the difference between Kubernetes and Docker, and
Kubernetes is for manage. Yes. Kubernetes is more for manage large Docker environments. And with small applications, you basically don't need it. You can handle all the containers by yourself. But in a large application, Kubernetes is fundamental.
It gives you the orchestration. Yeah. Daniel says, "Go Dion, Aqua Team." Oh, there was a question here about my audio. So my audio appears to be working now. This morning it wasn't. I don't know exactly what happened. I did move into a new location over this last week. I'm guessing there's something with my networking still. I'm not sure what it is, but I will hopefully get it reliably here. I'm looking at other internet options. So. There's a question here. I'm not sure that I understand the context from Joe Carney. Can Delphi work with Orleans? Are you familiar with Orleans, Dion? Or know what he might be referring to?
I didn't understand that context too, Dim.
All right. There was a comment about Unigui as well, which doesn't really fit with your session. It might have been left over from Ian's session last, but I don't know if the Unigui would make sense in a serverless. Serverless is all about those, like you said, the individual functions that you call that spin up are used and then go away.
Right. With Unigui, I think that maybe it will not work very well then. I don't have the right answer for that.
Yeah, I don't think so. And Gustavo said, thanks for mentioning his session, and that will be tomorrow. Yep, that's great. I thought that was fantastic too. Glenn says, fantastic session. Well done. Patrick says, except for the city where I live, where Delphi works well, what's Orleans? Yeah. As far as I know, it works fine in that city. All right. I think there's a lot of people saying thanks and such. Great. It was great. I was glad to see this covered as well. And like you said, Glenn had done the session previously on it too. And I commented, though, I like the fact that you're like, we can do both. We can go up to the cloud and we can come down from the cloud. That's one of the things I've always loved about Delphi is it's like there's some stuff Delphi is really good at. But at the end of the day, you can really go everywhere and do everything you want to with it if you're willing to, put the effort into it and make it work.
For sure, yeah, for sure.
All right, I don't see. Oh wait, here's another pinned message. What is involved in creating this sort of cloud server project in Delphi Professional? So the big differentiator between professional and enterprise is the server, but I believe doesn't Pro have the web broker? Or I don't know if we need web broker. Can you do this in Pro? Do you know?
I think that you can. But your database will have to be another API on the cloud. But I think maybe it works.
Yeah, you're right. That's true, because it isn't necessarily tied to that. But yeah, like you said, the enterprise does give you the ability to connect to local database or larger other databases as well that weren't APIs. Okay, I think that's it for right now. Thank you so much, Dion, for your session and for all you do in the community. And
thank you,
yeah, thank you. And I think you're going to be joining for Q&A on some of the other sessions too, right?
Yes, I will be.
Okay, great. We'll see you around then.
Nice, Tim.